really enjoyed this week's drawing tutorial. I love the idea of being cooped up in this little cabin in the middle of the wilderness. I'm going to show you with all sorts of different tricks and tools how to bring that glow through in a landscape like this. Break it down into steps that are way easier to follow than you might imagine, so that you can follow along, create this, and amaze yourself. Okay, so we're going to break this down into steps so that not only you learn about the painting process and techniques, but also about the app that I'm using, Procreate. But that isn't to say you couldn't use a different app on a different tablet and still follow along. Having said that, within the app Procreate, I'm using the default A4 canvas 297 by 210 millimeters at 300 dpi. And the color profile is the sRGB code, the one that ends in 2.1. All the brushes I'm going to be using are default brushes within the app, so I will let you know which brush to use at which point. And the colours, I've already pre-selected a colour palette. Each of the colours has what we call a hexadecimal code associated with it. All the codes are down in the description, so you can create the colour palette for yourself. Or next to the codes in the description is a link that takes you to my Patreon page where you can download the colour file for free to save you some time. And Patreon is also the place that you can support this channel and gain access to exclusive content such as extended versions of most of these tutorials. An enormous thank you to those people who do support me over at Patreon. It makes a massive difference. Thank you so much. And if you want to support the channel, but Patreon isn't your thing, then simply leaving a comment, giving the video a thumbs up, and subscribing, obviously. All of these things really help. And all of that said and done, we're going to get started. So the first thing we're going to do is rotate the canvas to the portrait orientation. I'm going to go to my colors. I'm going to use the first color on the top row. I'm going to drag into the canvas and it flood fills, gets rid of the white background. Now, please be aware that my camera and also the way that screens are calibrated differently means that the colors might look a little bit off. But don't worry, if you've downloaded the colors or you've used the codes, you are using the same colors as me, even if they may look a little bit different. Next, I'm going to go to my layers and create a new layer, layer 2. I'm going to go to the second color on the top row, and I'm going to go to the elements, clouds brush. I'm going to put the brush size maybe about 15% size, 100% opacity, and just do nice band of this across the top. I'm then going to reduce it to about 8% size, 100% opacity still. And we're going to do a series of breakaway kind of tufts and sections in these clouds, just to make that bottom part of our clouds just a bit more uneven. A couple of little breakaway sections maybe. And then we can always go in, reduce it down, maybe 5%, zoom in, and we can make a couple of these kind of breakaway sections a bit more refined. As you can see, I'm not spending a great deal of time on this. We're going for the effect rather than the minutiae of the details. It's not necessary. We're going to get a really pleasing effect without spending ages on it. I'm going to go to that layer slide and duplicate it. It's just going to firm up a little bit. Tap on the top version, merge down, so we've only used one layer. We don't want to excessively have layers if we don't need to. On that layer, I'm going to go to the adjustments, the Gaussian blur, and we're going to slide it across just to soften that in, maybe to, well, about 7%, looks quite nice. Deselect. I'm going to create a new layer on top, layer 3, and I'm going to go to the third color on the top row. I'm going to stay with the clouds brush, put it back up, maybe to about 8% again, 100% opacity. And I'm going to start at the top edge, bringing in some of this dark tone in a kind of patchy way. We don't want it to be solid, want it to be kind of feathered in, coming in places, but not necessarily consistently. Just bring it in from the top. We want to get this sense that the cloud is coming further towards us. Tones get darker when items are closer to us, typically, when it comes to cloud. And anything at the top of a canvas, when it relates to clouds, tends to be the darkest. Assuming that the horizon line will be the very distance, and anything coming towards us has this effect that it's darker here at the top. So a few just dark points in here. Don't need to do too much, and then we can go to the adjustments, the Gaussian blur, and we're going to do the same again, blur it across, maybe a bit less, 6% looks good. Deselect. Might just take layer 3, tap on it and merge down. We do it on separate layers just so we can affect it differently. We do it incrementally, but then if we're happy with it, we can merge it down. That's fine. We'll create a new layer on top. Again, it's layer 3, but it's replaced the other one. tap on the little N, scroll down to the Add Blend mode, which means anything we add now is going to be pushed towards the lighter end. And, well, we're going to go for this really vibrant, bright orange, the fourth colour. I'm going to switch brush. I'm going to go to the airbrushing soft brush, go for maybe 3% size, and we're going to have it pretty low, maybe about 5% opacity. And we've got two edges. We've got the edge where it hits the background sky, and then we've got the edge of the darker bits of cloud. I'm going to start with the edge of the darker bits of cloud, and I'm going to start tracing around the edge with this slightly more vibrant orange tone, just to help pick out that edge again, exaggerate it a little bit further, gives it a nice warm glow. Zoom out and you can see. But we're also going to allow it to extend down into the other cloud and start to kind of bleach out, in a sense, some of the details of some of that first colour. Not that there was a lot of detail, or bleach out in terms of the colour. It just sort of blurs in this sense that that is not necessarily completely separate from that. It goes in like a gradual blending together of the different zones, the different areas of the cloud. And we can allow it to extend beyond the edge as well, just a little bit on the bottom. And again, it creates more of a little bit of a glowing edge. I'm going to make more of that, but we're just starting to begin that process of creating the sun down here. It's going to impact the clouds, and it's the underside of the clouds that are going to be illuminated because the sun is going to be underneath. Again, none of this is particularly labor intensive or overly detailed. We're just creating effects, really. And then in the area down here, you can begin to suggest some extra textures coming in. Don't overdo that. Got a nice vibrant yellow we're about to use. Again, maybe we'll turn this down even further into the 2%. Maybe we'll turn it up to 10% opacity. And now we can trace around the edges a bit more precisely. And honestly, this vibrant orange doesn't appear very orange when we use it with the Add Blend mode on. It kind of just strips out a lot of the saturation and really gives it a yellow feel when you put it on. Something that is already quite light and yellowy. We don't want it all the way up there. Let's keep it at the 10%. That's really very helpful, because you apply it up here, it appears orange, and apply it down here, it appears yellow. It's just super useful. Now, I've been doing quite a lot of traditional painting at the moment, recently, and I have to say, when you switch from digital and you're used to little things like the Add Blend mode on different layers and being able to separate things out, you really miss it when you switch back to traditional work. There's definitely some connection and crossover of skills, things that relate, but then there are other areas that you really just wish you had the benefit of in traditional mediums as well, but we just don't. But we're using digital mediums, so we take advantage of what we have. We're still applying it manually. This is not cheating, it's just a tool. Doing it by hand, we're doing it manually, so I absolutely am well behind the idea that you use the tools at your disposal, and it definitely helps to use the layers and the blend modes. So again, just go around some of these edges. We don't want to do too much of this, and we are going to concentrate it more in the center areas, naturally enough, because that's where the sun is going to be most impactful. Maybe turn it down even further to the 1%, and you can just trace around the top edges a little bit. Don't want to do that too much, but it's a little tuft. Makes sense perhaps just have it creeping around the top as well a little bit, but not much. Okay, I'm going to create a new layer. Again, tap on the little N, put it to the Add Blend mode. I'm going to go in with the hard brush within airbrushing, and I'm going to go to the white actually. I'm going to go to the 6th colour on the top row, and we're going to decide the size of our sun in our setting. So I'm going to put it about 9%, 100% opacity, and we're going to have to make a decision where to put it. So I'm going to have it pretty much central, maybe just a smidge off pure center, and just a little bit down from the cloud. So I'm going to make a decision to put it about there, tap it in, and then going to go to the adjustments, bloom, slide that across to 100%, and we've got our sun. I'm going to create a new layer on top, tap on the N, scroll down to the Add Blend mode again, and we're going to go in with the 5th colour, the yellow. I'm going to use the soft brush with an airbrushing once more. I'm going to put the size up to about 30%, 3% opacity, and tap it in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I might just turn it up even more. 50%. 1, 2, 3. and that's probably sufficient at this stage. I'm going to go back to layer 2, back in with the second colour. I'll stay with the soft brush for this, 3% size, maybe about 30% strength, opacity. And I'm just going to build in some cloud coming in. Just tap it in, just so we've got some extra bits. Don't want it too close to the sun. Extend it off the side, go to layer 3, go to the fourth colour, turn the opacity down again. I decided it'd be nice to have a little bit extra here, so 10% opacity, some extra bits of cloud just encroaching upon where the sun is, then turn it down, 2% size, 20% strength, and we can just trace around that again, just around, nibble around the edges, bits of highlight, and we can also have some little stray bits, straggly bits that cross over near where the sun is, and then anything else is going to be pretty much obscured by mountain areas, so that will probably do for now. So I'm going to go to my layers. I'll stay with layer 3 and I'll create a layer 6 underneath the glow, because anything that we add in terms of mountains, I want to be affected by that glow as well. So underneath the glow is going to be an important part of it. So layer 6 is above layer 3, underneath layer 4 and 5. I'm going to switch to the airbrushing medium hard brush. I'm going to go to colors again, and we're going to go to the 7th color on the top row, 5% size, 100% opacity, and I'm just going to have a little mountain in the background that just peeks up kind of close to the sun. And then we don't really care about the bottom edge because we're not going to see almost any of that. If you want to, just for satisfaction, just fill it in, drag it into the lower area, turn it down 2%, and then you can just zoom in a little bit and 100% opacity. Add some little more refinement, some extra points and peaks to that distant mountain. Just refine it if you want to. It's only this bit that we're going to notice anyway, but you can see the impact that the glow has. It puts in context with everything else, so it's important we have that there. From this layer, I'm going to create a new layer, layer 7, and we're going to move along to the 8th colour. Still the medium hard brush, still 100% opacity, maybe about 4% size. And I'm going to have something coming in from this side at an angle. So we're starting in the middle, down here, and then we can just have it going up. I might have it actually quite close to the sun. Maybe it's just hitting the edge of that sun, and we might need to just adjust this, give it a really nice glow, coming up to a peak. Then we can have it coming down and just play around with that. I feel like I want to move that in a little bit. Easily done. Let's go to the adjustments, freeform, pinch it in. Gives us a little bit more space. We're going to have more of a mountain range in this area as well. Again, another great feature of digital is that it's endlessly adjustable. If you use real paint and you whack a load of dark color over light colors, then you're going to be in trouble. But it's great for endlessly adjusting digital. You don't need to be timid. You can really just go for it, see the impact, and then adjust it if it's not working. Bring this down, fill it in. So we brought it in an angle. We're just after this little peak, really. That's what we're going to notice. And then it comes down, disappears behind other ones we're going to add. I'm going to go to the layer, tap on it and put on the alpha lock. I'm going to create a layer above that, layer 8. I'm going to tap on the N, put it to the add blend mode. I'm also going to tap on it and put on the clipping mask, which links it to the layer 7. So now we can go in, something like the orange, the 4th colour on the top row. Go to the soft brush with an airbrushing, maybe about 10% size, put it quite low, 4% opacity. And just as it gets close to the sun, we want that real warmth. Just be nibbling away at the edge of that mountain. It's really going to bleach it out when it gets close to the sun. And we can just exaggerate that in this area. We can then go back to layer 7. I'm going to use the 9th colour. Go back in. Let's go for the medium brush with an airbrushing. 2% size, maybe 60% strength. And then we're just going to have this lighter tone. Just some little points of maybe snow collected on the mountains. You don't need to spend a long time on this. It's going to be obscured. You can just bring suggestions of it in. Maybe just keep it near the upper areas. Maybe I'll turn it down again, 40%. And it just hints at it, suggestions at it, and it goes a long way like that, just for that area. Back to layer 8, back in with the orange colour, back in with the soft brush with an airbrushing. Let's put it to 20% size, maybe 2% opacity, and this whole layer, I'm just going to lighten up a little bit more for the whole bit of it, just like that. Just a few passes is enough. That means I'm going to create a new layer, layer 9. and then go back in with the same colour, the 8th colour, with the medium hard brush, with an airbrushing, 4% size, 100% opacity, and I decide to do more mountains over the top. You can see now it's going to appear closer and darker. So we're going to do just that. So I'll start it down here, then I can really judge it. And I want it so that we still see some of that distant little mountain peeking through. We don't want to completely destroy that. So we just need to angle it now so that we're preserving some of what we've created. Don't mind if it covers up bits of the clouds, little mountain peak here, little points that stick up. You decide. Doesn't need to be exactly the same as mine at all. I'm going for an effect. As long as it's using the same colours and the same kinds of textures, then you can start to see the effect build in. Go for the 9th colour. Go to the layer, tap on it and put on the alpha lock. Go for maybe the medium brush this time. 2% size, and I'm going to keep it quite low at 30% opacity. And again, just like we had here, we're going to have some features, little bits of snow, and textures coming in. I'm not going to do perhaps as much of the texture on this one, just a few dashes, a few points. Stops it being flat and featureless. But I'm not going to do any more than about that really at this stage. We might go back and change it, but for now, that's probably enough. Again, from this layer, I'm going to create a new layer, tap on the N, scroll down to the Add Blend mode. I'm also going to tap on it and put on the clipping mask, which links it now to that layer. I'm going to go to the orange, 4th colour on the top row, and we're going to go in with the soft brush with an airbrushing. Let's turn it down slightly, maybe 15% size, 2% strength. And just for this area, again, we've got the sun coming through. It's only affecting this edge. You can't put it anywhere else other than within this layer. Maybe I'll turn it down a bit more, 8%. And we can really just be specific then and just put it here. And you can see the sun is really feeling like it's impacting the environment now. Turn it down, 2% size, and you can just go perhaps even along that edge, just lighten up, add some little suggestion along that edge a bit more, and that works. I'm going to go to our layers, create a new layer, layer 11, go to our colours, and we've got this end colour, the 10th colour, and we're going to go in with the medium hard brush with an airbrushing, 5% size, 100% opacity, and I'm going to start up here. Let's be bold, bring it down. Again, we're bringing it in so it just meets where the snow was. We only brought it so far because I knew I was going to bring in this bit of the mountain, bring it down. As I join it up there, and then we can drag and fill. And if you're not happy with the shapes you've got, well, long press on the eraser. When you look at the eraser, it's also selected the same brush. So we can go in with a small size, 2% size, 100% opacity, and we can nibble away at that mountain and just reshape it to be exactly what we need it to be, what we want it to be. Don't accept the first shape that you happen to come up with. Adjust it, fine tune it, back to the brush if you need to. Okay, I wanted that extra peak initially, but do you know what? I'm going to allow it to cover that up. It's fine. And it's a very dark blue, or it's a very jarring kind of blue. So I'm going to tap on the layer, tap on it, put on the alpha lock. I'm going to go backwards to the 8th colour. I'm going to go in with a soft brush with an airbrushing, maybe about 10% size, 20% opacity. And then I'm just going to take away a little bit, and this helps build in a sense of layers and depth. But you can see along this edge, I'm just taking some of that blue away, softening it in. We want to build layers without having to spend ages on them. So once I've done a pass of this, you can still see it. It's still darker than the other features, the other areas. I've not made it the same. I'm then going to go back to the 10th colour again with the medium brush, 20% opacity, maybe about 4% size. And then without releasing the pressure, just do it as one movement. Bring a pass of this up, keep it moving. If you hold it still, then it will snap to a straight edge, which we don't want. Release once and then go back over it again perhaps. And you've kind of built in another layer, and we can tap and feather that in, create some textures in here. You can see you've created another edge, so we've got different layers. I'm going to go to the first colour on the middle row, stay with the medium brush, 2% size, maybe 20% strength, and then we can just add some more texture, like snow just pouring down in the little areas settling, not melting in certain areas, little avalanches or snow slides just coming down the mountain on some of these areas. Again, I don't really intend to spend a huge amount of time on these textures, just a few hints at it, a few suggestions. It really does go a long way. I'm then going to go to my layers and create a new layer, layer 12, 10th color on the top row, medium hard brush, 5% size, 100% opacity, and well, I'm going to build in one coming in from this side. Again, your mountains don't need to be exactly the same as mine. I'm just going to have it a little bit on this side, and then I'm going to have it kind of coming down in this area. You're not going to see this crossover point because I'm going to have something in front of it. So I'm just going to fill that in like this. Again, tap on it, put on the alpha lock. With the alpha lock on, we're going to go to the 8th color again on the top row. Soft brush with an airbrushing, 10% size, maybe about 10% opacity. And just, certainly in the bottom area, just have it kind of merging in there a little bit. Just generally soften it in. You don't need to spend a long time on that. Then we are going to move to a brighter color, a lighter color. So let's go for the first color on the middle row again. Medium brush with an airbrushing, 2% size, still a 20% strength. And again, we can just pick out little areas, perhaps where the snow has settled. And again, I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time on this. I've got quite a lot to cover in this image, and the mountains in the background are an important feature, but it's not the only feature. So we'll just give it enough detail. I don't like some of that, so I can go back in with the 10th color, remove bits if don't want that much snow perhaps. Back in with the first color on the middle row. You decide how much snow you want to add. Go to my layers, create a new layer, layer 13. I'm going to go to the second color on the middle row. I'm going to go back in with I go for the medium brush actually. 5% size, maybe 80% opacity. And I'm going to have a section coming in here. And really we're coming down below the halfway point. We can always adjust these layers if we need to, but for now, you can see this is reaching down below the halfway. We have another little section here. And again, you must take it all the way across, it doesn't matter. And then we can drag in. I'm going to go to the smudge, put the smudge on the airbrushing medium brush, 1% size, 80% strength, and I can just push, maybe a little bit bigger, 2%, nudge up some of this texture, and it's going to create the sense that maybe there's trees back there. Just gives it an irregular edge. We're getting closer now, so probably get the sense that there's trees a little bit more. Again, that doesn't take much more than that really. I'm going to go to the layer, tap on it and put on the alpha lock, going with the 8th color on the top row. Soft brush with an airbrushing, 10% size, 10% strength. Just a little bit of that, not much, just a pass. Another pass, that's fine. Go to my layers, create a new layer, layer 14. Again, second color on the middle row. Medium brush with an airbrushing, 5% size. Let's go for 100% opacity. And we've got another section that cuts closer. And I want to preserve some of this area where they all cross over. So we don't want to cover up that. Bring it a little bit lower, and that can go all the way across. Once we've joined up both sides, then we can drag into that area so it flood fills. And you can endlessly adjust this, fine tune it. Maybe it might just take a little bit more up there. Just a little bit. Don't want to remove any of that, so not too far. And then we want a good section at the bottom for our other details. We may not have left enough space, but I can adjust that in a moment. On layer 14, we'll go back in with a smudge. It should be on the same settings, the medium brush, 2% size, 80% strength. We'll just push up. In fact, let's put it to 100%, give it a bit more power. And we can push up for trees. Excuse my voice, it's breaking a little bit. Push up for some trees, like so. You don't need to do a lot of detail, but it has an impact. Tap on the layer, put on the alpha lock, alpha lock. Go to the 8th color on the top row. Go to the soft brush with an airbrushing, 10% size, 10% opacity, and just maybe in the center, give it a little bit of that glow. Softens it in a little bit, but not too much. And now within that area, I'm going to go to the rainforest brush, tap on it, and I put the spacing within stroke path to 45% and done. I'm going to put it to 3% size, but really low, around 10% opacity. And I'm just within this area and creating a bit more texture. I don't want it to be quite as flat looking. It's subtle, you'll barely notice it, but on some level, you will register the fact that there's more textures in there. So just a few passes of that, and we can probably go back to layer 13, exactly the same, and do that there as well, just a little bit, not too much. Back up to layer 14 and back in with a lighter colour. So let's go for the third colour. Back in with the airbrushing soft brush, 2% size, 30% strength, and well, maybe just bits of snow even in here. Just a couple of taps of that, that's probably enough. And we've created a nice setting. Now, if you feel like you've encroached too far down in the landscape and you're happy with your mountains and they're finished, but you want to create a little bit more opportunity to shuffle things around, it's complicated by the fact that we've got some layers with the add blend mode on. So if we condense all of that down, then you're going to lose some of the add blend mode. So we won't do that. But what we will do is go to the top of layer 14, turn off the sun. So turn off layers 4 and 5. And from layer 14, we're going to go to the wrench, add, copy canvas, and paste. We go back to the layers. We've got the whole image, apart from the sun, we've got the whole image replicated as a different layer now. And that means with that layer, I can go to the transform, freeform. I'll just zoom out. I can pinch in from the bottom and I can squish it all up a little bit more. And I've just made a bit more space at the bottom simply by doing that. And I can go to the top, put back on those two layers, and you can see it has shifted and adjusted the placement, but it's not a problem. We can easily amend that. Take layer 5, tap on it and merge down with layer 4, so they're on one layer. Then with that we can go to the transform and just move it back to where we need it to be, about there. And you can see that's just totally shifted the composition. Again, another beauty of digital is that you can endlessly do that. Don't do that unless you're absolutely finished and happy with the background areas though. We definitely wanted to keep the glow separate from that, because if you squash the sun and make the sun more of an ellipse than a circle, then it won't work. You need that sun to be perfectly circular, obviously. Now, if you wanted to, if layers are a concern, at this stage you could start getting rid of some of those layers because you have it preserved as a separate layer where everything is condensed here anyway. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go from that inserted image and create a new layer, layer 15. I'm going to go in with the organic rainforest brush, back to my colors. I'm going to go to the fourth color on the middle row, 2% size, maybe 30% strength. And I'm going to decide where I want kind of like the bottom section to be. I want it to be on a slight slope, but not too much. I can just bring this across, something like this. And again, with the placement of this, if you're not happy, just go to the transform, drag it down. There you go. And now from this, it just gives us a starting point. We're going to start adding some trees in. So again, we're still on the fourth color. We're going to go in with, let's go for the Taralea brush. Let's reset it. I'm going to put it down to low on that 2% size, 100% opacity. I'll start over here, start with a tree trunk, and then you can just left to right start to create a sense of a much closer tree in our scene. Swing that foliage left to right, and then as it gets to the bottom, maybe just circle it in, fill it in a bit more. And you can create as many of these as you want. Doesn't have to be particularly laboured on either. Let's go for some over here. Again, just set the placement of the tree, and then just rock left to right. Slight upward tilt, lift to those branches if you like. Create a few of them. Again, I've not spent any huge time on these, I don't intend to. These are very much background ones anyway. Slightly taller one over here. A bit more separation perhaps of the branches, more noticeable when we get a bigger one. See there's some of the colour coming through in gaps. Fill it in. Then we can go to that layer, tap on it and put on the alpha lock. And well, we can soften it in. Same kind of tricks as before. We'll use the second colour on the middle row. We'll go in with the airbrushing soft brush, maybe 4% size and 20% strength. And some of these we can just knock back, give it a couple of passes, soften them in. Some of these smaller ones, we can just soften them in. Generally, create a sense of varied distance. Go over that one pass, go over the ones that are behind it a few more times. Go over one pass over this one. And you create a little bit of depth there. And then with the alpha lock off, we can go back in. Let's maybe use the medium brush with an airbrushing, 2% size, maybe 20% strength. Go in with the fourth color, and we can just create a suggestion of trees back there. You don't need to overly define them, just creating texture. Not too much of that. Then I'm going to go to my layers, create a new layer, layer 16. Quite a lot of layers in this tutorial. So on this new layer, I'm going to go in again with the fourth color and the Tarot brush, 2% size, 100% opacity. And I'm going to have some taller trees. So the tree trunks. These are going to be darker now, just simply because we haven't knocked them back. Swing left to right, create a bit more clarity for some of these branches. Once it gets down to a certain point, we can just, and we're going to obscure something I've just done there, but it doesn't matter. Sometimes that's the way it goes. Don't be afraid to destroy things that you've done if it's in service of the overall picture, the overall painting, composition, then it's necessary and it's to its benefit. So just cover up things if that's the way it goes. Over at this side, let's do one like this. Nice big tree, more differentiated branches. You can leave more gaps. We're going to notice them. And then as it gets down a bit further, maybe they just start to clump together a bit more. Again, we're not spending a huge amount of time on them, but a bit more. We're going to notice those spaces and details like that. And you could always go to layer 5. And if you needed to chop and shift it, you could always go in and selection, freehand, just grab a section there, for example, close the loop, transform, and you can always move it and bring it back in. So we've just re-revealed that original work that I did, that tree. Okay, so now we've got to this stage, I'm going to move forward. We're going to create a new layer, layer 17. And on this new layer, I'm going to go in with the airbrushing soft brush. I'm going to go in with the 6th color on the middle row, 2% size, 20% strength. And we're just going to do a pass of this along that line initially. Keep it quite simple. Turn it up, 6% size, do another pass. Keep it quite simple and just bring it down a little bit further. Allow it to kind of fade out like that. Once we've got that, we'll stay with a soft brush. Go to the 7th color. Let's turn it up, 10% size, 20% strength. Just a few bits of this color. It's getting warmer as it comes towards us. Build it down. Next color, we've got a dark color, the 8th color. We're going to get some real darkness coming in closer to us as well. Great sense of perspective with tone. We're also going to get some greens coming in. I'm going to use the 9th color just to kind of ramp up some of the green colors. We'll go into a lot more detail, but just starts the process initially, getting some of that green in there in the foreground. Now, before I do much else, I'm going to create the building, the structure for our scene. So I'm going to create a new layer, layer 18. I'm going to go to the medium hard brush with an airbrushing, and I'm going to use the 1st color on the bottom row, 2% size, 100% opacity. So we'll put a point and we can always reposition it. Doesn't really matter initially. Create an angle down here, hold it until it snaps. An angle down here, hold it till it snaps. If you don't feel it's steep enough, you can go to the transform. Transform, freeform, squash it in. It's going to make it more of a steep angle. Slide and duplicate the layer. Move it. Go on freeform. In fact, go to uniform. Slightly close it down from the corner. We're not too much. We don't need to be dramatic. Just enough to make the top point a bit lower on the distant bit. So we're creating the rear of our structure there. So it just needs to be a little bit lower. The top there is lower when we get to this point, but not by a huge amount. Not hugely spaced apart either. It's about there. Take top layer 18, merge it down, condense it, and then we can just join those up. And you can start to see it resembles more of a structure now. Join those up. Doing it freehand, it doesn't need to be absolutely perfect. Let's close in that area. We can always just drag flood fill. Once we've got to that point, we can go to the transform and perhaps rotate it just so it seems a little bit more level. Really, I suppose we want that point and that point to feel like it's, it's kind of grounded and level. You don't want to be having your structure completely offset. That feels a bit better, maybe a touch more that way. And you can always adjust it later if need be, but that feels a bit more like you'd actually step inside and you wouldn't be all over the place. And from that corner, just bring it straight down And from that edge, just a little bit back from the corner, so you can see it creates this little lip at the edge, which is an important part of it. And then for the bottom bit, it's just going to blend in, but we'll create a line anyway. And then I'm going to put the brush to like 5% and about 95% opacity. And then I'm just going to give it a pass over here. And the reason I've done that, rather than just flood filling it, is it still allows you to see the separation of the roof. It's very, very subtle, but you can just see the edge there that we originally put in, which is useful. And we have a line there that's just looking really wonky now, doesn't it? That's fine, just go down 1%, straighten it up if you need to. We can endlessly refine this. It's going to be a pretty ramshackled looking cabin anyway, so I'm not overly bothered. But yeah, if you need to neaten it up, you can do. I'm going to go to the layer, tap on it and put on the alpha lock. I'm going to use the second colour on the bottom row. Go to the medium brush, top under 1% size, maybe about 20% strength. And well, we can start to define some areas. I'm going to have a line across there, go over it a few times. It's only subtly lighter and we can always ramp this up. Oops, a line in that bit, a line across there just to define it a little bit more. And again, it doesn't need to be perfect. Perhaps we'll go for the fourth colour. In fact, let's start with this side of the roof. It's going to catch the light more. So we can just create some sense that there's movement there. There's a direction to the roof. We've got structure, we've got wood that's placed on the roof, and it just has that direction to it. Again, let's just redefine that bit at the top. Maybe we could redefine it with the first colour, lower on that 1%, and just create a little shadow underneath that as well, just to really spell out the separation. Back to the fourth colour, build in some highlights, make it even stronger. We've got other lighter colours, perhaps we can go for the 8th colour on the top row. We can really make it stronger, ramp it up. Some of the light's really going to be impacting on this side. This bit of the sun, or this bit of the roof, is going to be hit by the sun, so we can allow that to be brighter, but not too much. Maybe we'll just 2% size it and just give it a sweep all the way across. In fact, let's just make it that bit brighter. And we can go back to the first colour, 1% size, 40% strength. Perhaps we can just create some sense that there's separation. Goes across there as well. And I'm going to turn it up 70% opacity, build in a little chimney. In fact, we need to go to the layer, tap on it and turn off the alpha lock briefly for this. Have a little bit where the smoke, have a little chimney where the smoke can get out. I'm going to have a little fire in there, presumably. Log burner, turn it up 2% size down to about 20%. And then we have a little shadow over on this side, just to hint at it. Turn on the alpha lock again. In fact, rather than doing that, we'll create a new layer, tap on it and put on the clipping mask, which links it. We'll leave the alpha lock on, but we've got this on a separate layer and it's linked now, so we can be a bit more free. We can go in, for example, with the last colour that we've got on the bottom row, which is the 7th colour. Go in with the medium brush, 2% size, maybe as low as we can get, yeah, and about 30% strength. And we'll just define an edge, and then we can do some boards that cut across. We want a little bit of separation. We want to see that. Doesn't need to be overly neat. Again, it can be quite rustic, ramshackle. Got a point there I didn't mean to put in. And I don't care about this edge because we can go in with the eraser. Put the eraser on the medium hard brush, 100% opacity, 1 or 2% size, and then we can just tidy up that edge so it meets that part over there. And then we can also put in a little window, maybe about here, and then turn it up 2% size, 60% opacity, and just remove it a little bit from the top. There's a shadow perhaps being cast, so we don't see the light hitting the boards as much. Back to the brush. We've got this side to deal with. We'll have that in the 2%, again still in the medium brush, 30% opacity or so. We'll just do from the center. We'll do some boards. We don't have to create a big gap between them, it's fine. We definitely want to create that kind of vertical movement. And then we can go in with the eraser. We've still got the eraser on the medium brush, 2% size, 60% strength. And we can just remove it a little bit up here, press lightly and go over it a few times. It creates that shadow. Remove it more gradually. Sets it back underneath the lip of that roof a little bit more. 100% opacity, lower on that 2%. We can run a line across. Let's try and get it a bit more horizontally, like that. And then I'm actually going to remove that bottom section. I just wanted that top area really, like that. That's working quite nicely. We'll create a new layer, and it's important we do this on a separate layer, just because some of the lines might end up crossing what we've already done. So still with the medium brush, still the last colour, the 7th colour on the bottom row, 2% size, low on that 2%, and let's turn it down a little bit, 25% strength or so. And then just underneath that line, I'm going to do, as best I can, freehand, a series of lines that come across this way, and it doesn't matter if they're a bit wobbly. I'm not going to overly worry about it, but try to keep them parallel so that they feel unified. Again, if they go a little bit wobbly, I wouldn't overly agonize over it. Obviously there's degrees of wobble. If yours is excessively, then yeah, just do your best. And then we go to the eraser, put the eraser on the medium hard brush still, 2% size, 60% strength, and we can just take away from this edge. It's on a separate layer, which is why we did that, so that we can just erase a bit more freely now, so that it meets the edge. Erase from the roof area, erase from that corner. We'll preserve that separation from this to that bit. Let's put the eraser on 100%, and well, I'm going to carve out a door. Let's make a little doorway. You just decide the height of the door. The height of the door in many ways is going to determine the size of the little cabin. If you do a really small door, then it's going to increase the look of the size, but I don't want it to be a big cabin. I want it to be quite cozy. And then another space here for a window. Just remove. Again, you don't need to be overly neat. You can always just go in and tidy up the edges. So just get the placement in, like so. Back to the brush, and then, well, we can always define the edges more positively with the brush, like so. And again, a bit ramshackled, that's fine. Just an inset in that frame, and then maybe a couple of steps suggested at it down there. And then on a separate layer, layer 21, tap on the end, scroll down to the add blend mode. I'm going to go in with the orange, so we're back up here, and we'll go in perhaps with the medium brush, with an airbrushing. We're going with the 4th colour, the orange, 1% size and about 20% strength. We've got a side window. I want to create a little bit of a separation, a top section and a bottom section, like panels. Maybe turn it up 2% and then really down to about 5% strength. Create a bit of a glow around it generally, not too much. And I'm going to go to the yellow, which is the 5th colour on the top row. Turn it down again, 1% size, 10% opacity. And we can just ramp up the light. Maybe we could even use the white colour just to make it a little less yellow and orange, so we get the light. Then we move over to this side, back to the orange colour. Stay with the medium brush, higher on the 1%, and maybe about 10% opacity. I just want to create indented from the frame, really nice glowing window, and I can fill it in. Go over it a few times. Doesn't have to be majorly neat, but a little bit of neatness on this feature is quite useful. You can always remove some of it as well, which we're about to do. Let's go for the yellow, 5th colour. Maybe there's like curtains and then a gap between the curtains even. Maybe imagine a light that's higher up, so you have a little bit more of a glow in the upper part, and just some streaks that come down. You don't need to really overly define what exactly is going on inside that, but hints at it. Go to the eraser, put the eraser on the medium hard brush, 1% size, 100% opacity, and then, well, this is where we just carve out the window frame. Perhaps I will hold it until it snaps for this, so we get a nice straight line and we can adjust it, and straight up, hold it till it snaps, and then you can adjust, can thicken this line up as well. Might even go to the soft brush, 1% size, 100% opacity. Let's just make this a little less crisp, feels a bit much, a bit heavy. And we can go around the edges and tidy this up as well. Nothing here is majorly neat and overly defined, but a little bit of detail goes a long way, especially when you've zoomed out. Again, we're on the add blend mode, so I'm going to go back in with the soft brush, the orange, 3% size, 10% strength. Tap it a few times here. And the yellow, Tap it a few times here. Just ramp it up. We've created that crispiness, but we can soften it in as well. In fact, we'll create a new layer, tap on it, put on the add blend mode, and sometimes it's necessary to do that to just ramp up the brightness. I don't know why, it's just a particular quirk. Lower on the 2%. Sometimes for some reason it limits how much you can ramp up the glow. Stops after a certain point. Back to the orange. I'm going to do this quite big this time, so 5% size, 5% opacity. Let's create a bit more of a glow, soften that in. That's working better. Turn it down to the 1% and maybe the sill, window sill, is going to reflect that light a little bit more. Makes sense. We've got a bit of a doorway, so let's go back to layer 20. Maybe go back to the third color on the bottom row. We're going with a medium brush with an airbrushing. 1% size, 20% strength, which is great. A couple of panels maybe. Bottom panel and a top panel. I don't want it to be overly defined. Maybe go for the warm color here on the middle row, the 7th color. And just a little bit of a hint of that wood warmth. Just give it a sweep. Again, I don't really want to overly define that. Just a hint. I'm going to take layer 20, I'm going to tap on it and merge down, just in the interest of preserving layers. Tap on layer 19, merge down. I've got the HUD on one layer now. I notice that it feels a little bit off, so I'm going to go tap on it and turn off the alpha lock. Transform, uniform, just rotate it a hint, and it doesn't take much. And the windows are probably going to be off on that basis too. So I'm going to take the top window, layer 22, tap on it and merge down. Then we've got the windows on one, or the glow on one layer, so tap on that, uniform, rotate that as well, just so it lines up. I feel that sits better in the landscape. Back to layer 18, the HUD is all on one layer. Medium brush, back in with the 7th color on the bottom row, 1% size, 30% strength. And we're just going to go in there, just pick out the odd detail, make some lighter sections, make it uneven. It doesn't need to be consistent. We don't want it to be completely consistent at all. Some little bits that stick out that highlight more than others. Make it uneven, have some little anomalies, and that's fine. So we're going to create a new layer, layer 20. We're going to go in with a soft brush with an airbrushing. We're going to go to the 9th color on the middle row, 3% size, about 40% strength. And then I'm just going to work in a series of taps and lumps. We've got a really kind of grassy, but also lumpy ground texture coming in now. So we'll build this across, allow the gaps. Could even turn it down a little bit more actually for the distance. 2%, just have a few going back here into the distance. Just really build in the idea that we've got a texture going off there. Back up again, 3%. You can leave gaps, it doesn't need to be all completely filled in. We've got a shadow on this side, obviously. It's going to be the opposite side of the sun. So we're going to have a big area here that's in shadow. And as we come further down, higher on that 3%. And then these lumps, clumps of grass are going to be more spaced apart. So allow bigger gaps between them. Turn it up, 4%. Nice big clumps here in the foreground. Like that. And that already just gives you a perspective of texture and really helps. I'm going to go in with the 10th color and maybe turn it back down again, 2%. Going to have some nice greens coming through here. Maybe in the shadow part of the sun, it's less illuminated by the orange glow, so we can just see some of the green in the shadow bits a little bit more clearly, perhaps. Notice it like that. I want to have a nice path leading to the cabin. Stay on the same layer. Go perhaps to the 3rd color on the bottom row. Let's stay with a soft brush for now. 2% size, maybe 70% strength. And we'll just have it leading here and just sort of zigzagging. Nice big wavy kind of path that comes in here. Turn it up, 4%. We're just being quite loose and rough with it initially, just to map it in. Don't need to be overly defined. Let's go to a lighter color, the 4th color on the bottom row. Down to 2% size and maybe 30% strength. Let's zoom in. And then, well, this is where we just need to define it a little bit more clearly. Perhaps we'll turn it down even smaller, down to the 1%. We can allow it to build in some textures. And we can also use it to define the edges. So if we've got a cluster, we can go around it, pinch in, so you get these little peaks that just go around those grass clusters. It'll help define that edge of the path quite nicely for us. And also build texture across, maybe back up again 2%. Keep it a bit more loose maybe. Again, just define these edges in and out, those clumps. Like so. Let's go for the really nice dark colour, the 5th colour. Bottom row, 3% size, 30% strength. And then, well, we can build in on this side of the clumps some nice shadow. As it gets nice and close to us, 4%. We've already got the green kind of positioning it for us, but we can make more of some of these, make them nice and big. And then they get a bit smaller as they go back. Let's turn that down 2%. Let's zoom in. And some of these clumps, let's turn the opacity down even further, actually 20%. Some of these clumps can just have a bit of darkness to them. That's starting to work. We're going to add some highlights now, and this is going to be the making of that effect, I think. So we'll create a new layer, layer 21. We'll go in with the 6th colour on the middle row. Probably go in with the soft brush, 2% size, 20% strength. And then, well, we can just start identifying the top of our clumps. Maybe just turn it down a little bit more, really low on that 2%. We're just going over the top of those lumps, creating a nice highlight on the top edge of them. Still on the soft brush with an airbrushing, maybe a little bit higher. Such a tight balance sometimes between low on the 2% and higher on the 2%. You just got to get it just right. I think a little bit higher initially. We can always tighten up some of the detail later. Again, the top of the clumps, and zoom out, you can start to get that effect. It's really pleasing. And they can all start to cluster together. The sun is going to reach this section more obviously, so we can allow it to cluster. Have a bigger impact, really ramp up the glow on the ground over here, for example. And as we come back here, we can notice the top edge of the clumps illuminated a bit more clearly. And over here as well. Just take the time, zoom out, check the impact until you're happy with it. Again, I'm going to build up the glow back here, ramp it up. Again, it brings the light into the scene. And just a little bit lower on that 2% for the back areas. And then for these clumps, maybe down even further, 15% strength or so. It just makes it a bit harder, a bit more determination to get this light in there, which is sometimes what you need. If you've got it too high, then it makes a jarring kind of brush marks. Whereas if you've got it lower on the opacity, then you have to really go over it and over it, and it'll soften it in a little bit better. Again, just keep taking stock of the overall scene, the impact, go over those clusters. I'm overall starting to be quite pleased with the effect. Just turn it up, 3% size, in fact even more, 4% size. For those really close to ones, you can have it almost like a blurring out effect anyway with a larger brush. And a softening kind of effect, although we might just clarify that with some grass, make it a bit clearer. But initially just get a kind of soft hump with a bigger brush. Bring it into different areas, a bit more over here perhaps. 3% size, still at the 14%, it's close enough. We're not going to quibble about 1%. If I say put it at 15% and the sliders are quite tricky and you get it at 14, it's close enough because the Apple Pencil because the pencil pressure will make more of a difference sometimes than the actual opacity. So don't worry. Let's turn that down, 2% size, 30% strength, and just, I'm going to tidy up that back edge a little bit. Make it a bit crisper, a bit soft. That works a bit better. I'm going to go back to the path, so layer 20. Let's go back in with the 8th colour on the top row. Go in with a soft brush, 2% size, maybe 20% strength. And maybe just bits of this path are going to be illuminated more as well. A bit warm that, a bit cold rather. Let's go for the orange again. So we'll go in with the 6th colour, we can use a mixture of this orange, have it snaking in, along with the 8th colour on the top row. So we're getting a nice sort of blending of those two colours. Allow them to work together. So alternate between the 6th colour on the middle row, create some of that warmth. Let's turn it over 4%, bring it closer to us. Let's go to the 8th colour, allow it to mix together. That's helped with the path. Perhaps it should have a little bit more texture on the path. So we'll probably go to, let's go to the 2nd colour on the bottom row, still with the soft brush, 2% size, maybe 30% strength. And I'm going to build in some shadows anyway. Make a bit more of that, but then turn it down 2%. You can build in some more texture. You're not necessarily going to see highlights of anything on the path, but you'll notice the shadow. Just adding a bit more. We're still just using the soft brush, it's fine. A little bit labor intensive to do textures like this by hand, but sometimes it's just part of the overall workflow that it just needs to be done. It doesn't necessarily take a huge amount of time, just quite a lot of individual little dashes and points, but they're not difficult to do. So just allow your hand to keep moving, keep adding these little bits of refinement and texture in there. Maybe we can go to a darker color again, the 1st color. Some of these need to be more noticeably lumps of stones. Blend with the edges. These little features on the edges just help blur the clumps in with the path. It's quite useful. Don't skimp out on this stage. It just adds a lot more clarity, which will bring it all together. Not everything needs to be super detailed, but if you just do some detail in some areas, then it lends a lot to other areas. Then perhaps we can go for, let's go for this bright colour up here. It's a bit brighter than that. 7th colour on the top row. Create some little highlights on top of stones here and there. Don't need to overdo it. Just a little bit, maybe in the centre of the path. Just a little bit like that. And then I'm going to take layers 21, tapping it and merge down. So we've got all of that on one layer. I'm going to go to the smudge tool, go to the inking, dry ink brush, 10% size, maybe 80% strength. And I'm just going to run it through some of these in the absolute foreground. You can run it through the light colours, run it through the dark colours, and it just creates some textures in the very foreground that I think can be quite useful. Create a bit more of a sense that we have definition and grass. Again, I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time on this. Maybe pull out the light colours as a priority. You could even turn that down a little bit more, 8%. Just something we can do. We can do it over here. Pull out the light colours as much as you can, and some darker colours. You decide how much of that you want to do. You might prefer the slightly more soft aesthetic to that, but I think a little bit of clarity really lends a lot more believability to the rest of the scene. So just a few bits of it, and then we can go in perhaps with the 4th colour. We'll go in with the inking, dry ink brush. We'll put it low down, 15% opacity, 5% size, and well, we can have some grass coming in here, maybe a little bit bigger actually, 10%. We can have some grass coming through here as well, some longer pieces. Here in the foreground, something like that. Okay, I'm going to leave this tutorial here at this point. I hope you've enjoyed following along. Please leave me a comment, give me a suggestion of the kind of thing that you'd want to see next, and don't forget to subscribe, and I shall see you back here soon. Bye for now.